There's some good stuff on the back of the cover of one of the books about it. She puts it politely, I don't know how I'll bring it down to my sense, she'll build dust detector. A fairly significant multi-million-dollar portfolio in the real estate world and all of that good guy stuff. Lost the lot. Lost the lot based on, some people might say that was silly and pig-headed. She called it ethical and had to do what she had to do. So I'll shut up and I'll leave it for Trish to give you her story. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Bill. Some of you may be wondering how Bill can describe me as someone who has values and ethics that match the company, and yet I went to prison. Because clearly, doing something that puts you in prison doesn't match up with the values and ethics that you're learning about. And you're right. My heart for leaders is to really have an impact on the people that you lead in such a way that they become better people, and you do too. I've always been a person of ethics. There's the sort, we say, oh, yeah, no, I'm a good bloke. Yeah, I'm a good person. Pretty much everybody thinks that, don't they? But when life happens, there are circumstances that can create the perfect storm, which if you're not prepared and if you don't build margin in your life, you will break out and make a decision that you can't believe you have. Now, when you're young, you can sit there and say, I'll never do that. But when you've been around a while and you see your friends' marriages break up, you see their kids not speak to them again, or you see other things happen in the workplace, you realise that good people slip. And it's easier to be judgmental than to look within at, hey, could that happen to me? There, but for the grace of God, go I. My husband and I rode the investment train. We went to all the seminars, listened to all the gurus, and what they said was right. We added value to our properties, we got hold of the equity and got the next property, and we did well, and I've had businesses before. I was a photographer, had a good business doing that. And we ended up being asset-rich, cash flow poor. And so we were looking for investments that would bring in cash flow. And I've tried to learn how to trade shares, but it wasn't my thing. I can look at a property and I can say, yep, we'll change the handles, paint that wall, move this around, and we can add value to it. Shares was a different thing. And I was introduced to a fellow who claimed to be a currency trader. And people I trusted knew people who, so there's a few steps in between, vouched for him to say that he had been doing it for a number of years, and so we risked a small amount of money and that went well. And because my husband and I were successful, people would look to us as they will look to you for advice and guidance. And I would never tell people where to put their money, but I was generous with what we knew and what we were doing. So the long and the short of it was, this fellow asked me to be a contact person so that when people wanted to give him money, they'd give it to me, I'd give it to him. Each month, it was a loan, each month he would pay me and I would pay them, so that he could be left alone to do the trading. Now this could be another business venture when it comes to you. It might not necessarily be somebody trading and doing an exotic investment. It could just be a building project. It's not the product that's the problem, it's the person. And if you don't do enough due diligence on the person, and I did as much as I could do that I knew to do at the time, and what I do now when I speak to business groups is I speak about due diligence and spotting fraud signals, because they are there if you know what to look for. So anyway, after a year and a half, he stopped paying, and it was my job to tell everybody that there was no money that month, and that was very hard. Second month came along, and he's not paying again. That's when people became frightened, aggressive and hostile, and the emails that were coming through were not very nice. By the third month, I was a wreck, And 2 days before he was due to pay, because he'd said, yes, it should be okay, no, he's not paying. And I caved. Now, in a few sentences, that sounds like, well, how could you go from being this ethical person to someone who caves? But a lot happens in between. As you know, a business day is a long one, a lot can happen. And so, people were still giving me money to give to him. And I said to him, look, I've got this amount of money that's sitting here waiting to give to you. Do you think just this once, we could use this money to make a payment to everybody to give them some relief? And that would take the pressure off you so that you can keep trading and get things caught up for next month. And he said, all right, let's do that. Have you ever been in business and you've thought, this is too tight, just this once I'll do it this way? Might not be illegal, might not be against the law, like as in ethical or even a moral thing, but it might be something that is not the proper way to do things, and you got away with it and it worked for them. Like using the accounts here to pay wages when it's supposed to be over there, and then catching it up next time. It can happen, especially in a small business where things are really, really tight. On a bigger business, you've generally got more controls in place to stop that happening. Anyway, regardless, I did that, and it was wrong. And I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway. Because I'd lost my perspective, because I had not built margin in place for me to back up and turn around or get advice, because the people I would normally go to for advice had money in. So how do I go to someone and say, look, I'm really worried about this money, when it's their money? That's not an excuse, that's just how it was. And I know what I should have done, but I didn't have the capacity to think that clearly at the time. Shortly after, he was reported to ASIC and I was called in for an interview where I said, look, this is what's been going on, this is what I did to try and fix it, what do we do now? And they just said, you did what? And I said, well, you know, I can fix this up. Like I've got resources to cover all this myself. But it was too late then, because they'd advised me to go into voluntary liquidation, which meant I no longer had control over my own money. And it also meant in a liquidation that it basically means everything gets sold up to pay creditors, which technically I had creditors, but I didn't, because they'd given me money to give to him. So they're really his creditors, but technically they were mine. They never got any money anyway, because everything that was realised from those millions of dollars of property went to the fees of the liquidators. Has anyone experienced or know people been involved in things like that? That's how it works. Liquidators come in. Even when you read in the paper that liquidators got so much money back for creditors, what they don't tell you is they sucked it all up in their hourly rates and their $35 a sheet photocopying, etc., etc. Now I'm exaggerating, but generally, I don't know of any cases where people. No, I do. There's been a couple of cases where people have got maybe $100 back out of so many 100,000. The point is that this is real life, and stuff happens. That it's your preparation that takes you through it. Now, I understand that there might be people sitting here saying, well, you're an idiot. You were dumb, and you shouldn't have done this, and you should have seen this happening. You're right, I can't argue with that. What I would like you to do is take away anything valuable from what I've said that can help you, or people that you know, or people in your charge who may not be as clever as you. They might be the ones who are impressionable. Your leadership could be such that they're frightened to come to you because they'll get bawled out. Maybe, but hopefully because you've done this course, you'll be able to deal with that better and give the impression to them that it is safe to come to you if they've stuffed up and they've put a number in the wrong column or they've destroyed something. And most people will probably try and cover it up or fix it without you knowing. And that's a dangerous thing. So even if your leadership is so good that what I've got to say is irrelevant to you, think about it in terms of the people that you lead. Is that fair enough? Good. So what happens? 2005 was the offence, 2 years of liquidation. during which time we lost our home and had to go renting. And I went to work for a corporate investigator that I met at a breakfast because he was talking about fraud warning signals and all the things that I should have spotted. And I spoke to him afterwards, and I was so passionate about what he did and the fact that I didn't know who he was prior. One phone call to this investigator and I wouldn't have touched the fella. He knew who he was. He had connections in Sydney with the underworld. Now that gentleman's in prison now, and I helped put him there. But not before I served my time, because what I did was illegal. It breached, even though I didn't steal any money for myself, I breached the Corporations Act. And while I was working for this man, I was served with papers charging me with fraud. Which, for someone from a very straight background, that is particularly humiliating and shameful, because she's dishonest. She's done the wrong thing. She's made a dishonest gain. They never did quite establish what the gain was that I got, except for perhaps temporary peace of mind. But the fact is, regardless of how you put it technically, and other people have said, oh, you didn't really do anything wrong. No, I did. I did. I've never shied away from that. One of the keys of leadership is not justifying yourself. When you've made a blue, you own it. You don't have to rub your nose in it, but you don't make excuses. You know, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of how you were set up, there's something in you that was a party to it, and you own it, and you'll get more respect from your charges, from the people underneath you when you are like that, rather than try and blame, oh, it's in the mail, oh, the secretary stuffed up, or things like that. Be totally clean like that. And be prepared to cop any criticism that comes from that, because that'll only be temporary. But if you try and deceive and cover up, as we saw our Prime Minister stumbling through last week and saying, oh, I didn't know about that. Well, she refused to say whether the speech had been written 2 weeks before. She just wouldn't answer it. Now, got to give her credit. She didn't say, like, she was very clever at it. But, you know, just be upfront and take ownership of it, and you'll get past it quicker and won't bite you in the backside next time. Went to court in 2009, so the offence was 2005, liquidation for 2 years, year and a half of lawyers toing and froing as they do, never once denied what I did, so it's not like there was a battle on. I went to court in January 2009 and came home 8 months later, and my husband moved our family. Just before I went in, we moved in with my parents. So my husband moved in with his in-laws, gave up his real estate career, because you can't sell real estate as a single dad and have 3 primary school aged children. So we had little girls who were